and I really wasn't sure which to discuss tonight. But there's one area in halacha which I've been waiting for the opportunity to discuss, and it's something which is ala perek, which is a contemporary issue. I'd like to discuss to you tonight the tremendous trukah that certain people have had to renew a mitzvah which we have not had for many centuries. And that is the renewed interest over the last 110 years in the possibility of having techelet once again. As you know, we wear tzitzis and we have lavan in our tzitzis. We say Kriya Shema, and every single morning we read the pasuk, V'nosnu al tzitzis hakanaf psil techelet, that we're really supposed to have techelet on our tzitzis, strings of blue. We don't have it. Beginning 110 years ago, with the well-known Radzina Rebbe, there was a renewed interest in trying to find techelet, and that interest has continued up until today. And this is an inyan which I think it would be lacking for us not to be aware of the particulars of any mitzvah, but certainly of a mitzvah which has in it so much intrigue and so many riddles. It's of a tremendous interest, the search for the techelet. In the Zman HaGemara, there clearly was techelet. Everyone had techelet in the time of Shas. Ad Kidei Kach, there's a Mandiyamar in the Mishnah that Rebbe holds, that techelet ma'akev v'salavah. Rebbe's shita was that without techelet, you can't wear a talis. You can't wear a talis cotton. If you don't have techelet, don't wear arba kanfas. We don't paskin like Rebbe. That's why we wear tzitzis. Because we paskin virtually all the Rishayim, with the exception of the Balamar, paskin that had techelet einay ma'akev v'salavah. And for that reason, we today, for many centuries, have been wearing lavan alone. When was the techelet lost? The Rambam writes in his Pirush HaMishnayos in the beginning of the 4th parak of Menachos, Ve'einoi nimtza biyadeinu hayayim. The Rambam says, today we don't have techelet. Lefi she'einanu yaidim litzayvai. We don't know how to dye techelet. De'ein kol min techelet, nikra techelet. Not every blue is techelet. Ela techelet hayadua. It's a specific techelet. She'i efsher la'asayse hayayim. The Rambam says a strong lashon, she'i efsher. It's not possible to make it today. It seems that it was lost much earlier, because we have a Medrash Rabbah in Bamidbar Rabbah, Parsha Yud Zayin, that says that Hatchelas Nignas, that already then, at the end of the time of the Amoraim, probably somewhere around the year 400 or 500, already the techelet was lost. And we don't know how much earlier than that the techelet was lost. There are many theories as to why it was lost. The Balei Kabbalah see in this a Yad Hashem, that it was deliberately lost. The Ben Ish Chai in the Ben Yayada, which is his Tshuva Svarim, in his first volume, the section Said Yisharim Simin Yud, writes that Bizman Hazeh Achar HaChorban, he says, B'Shem the Arizal, we can't have techelet. We don't have enough energy to withstand the kedusha that the techelet has. The Mekubalim see in the Genizas HaTcheles a Yad Hashem, which certainly Lefishi Tasam cannot be turned around. But we are Balei Halacha. It's possible that techelet was lost during the time of the Romans. The Romans held that blue was a royal color, and they prohibited others from wearing it. And it's certainly a possibility that it was then lost. The Radzina Rebbe, Reb Gershon Henoch Leiner, who lived about 120 years ago, he felt a strong tshuka to renew the techelet. He was a man with great yediyas, not only in Torah, but in Yediyah di Alma, in worldly matters. He was a man who spoke many languages, and a man who understood the sciences. And he was a Rebbe. To Today he wouldn't have made it. But he traveled to the great aquarium, he writes, in Naples, to study the fish and to try to come to a maskana as to which is the chalazain. We know that you need the chalazain to make techelet. So he went to try on a quest to find the chalazain so that he could have techelet. In 1887, he printed the first of 3 svarim, small svarim that he put out. It was entitled, the first one, Spunei Temunei Chayil. And in it he writes, and I quote to you, Gam anochi hechalesi v'sholachti liyam hatichayin. I put a lot of effort. I sent to the Mediterranean, umuvali habriya, and they brought me a specific fish. V'imeminim hanikroim dage hadiyai. And it's a fish called the dag hadiyai, the tint fish, the dye fish. Sheyesh b'zeh ketisha asaminim. There are 19 varieties of this tint fish. V'nirali shebibin echad mehem yesh bahem kol asimanim shenisbaru b'chazal. One of these 19 varieties of this squid, of this tint fish, has the simanim of the chalazon. V'im yazreini Hashem lavai leglilas yam hatichayin. And if HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give me the opportunity to travel, v'asigeyu b'idenu chai, and I'll get such a fish while it's alive, anusa v'eshtadel lahaitzi mimenu atcheles. I'll try to get the techeles out. Why did he need it when it was alive? Tosfos in Shabbos indicates on Daf Ayin Gimel that the techeles, that the dye from which techeles is made, is removed from the chalazon when it's still alive. And here's a point which the Radzina and those who came after him based much of their search on. That Tosfos says that the dama chalazon from which the dye is made is not the blood in the sense that we have blood that goes through our bodies, but that aside from the blood which is used to oxygenate and to let the fish live, that it has a separate pouch of dye which it manufactures with separate glands, and that is the dye from which techeles is made. Now, if you hold like Tosfos, and the Rambam doesn't say this clearly, but if you hold like Tosfos, that narrows the search down dramatically, because there are countless numbers of fish in the sea. But there are very few, relatively speaking, that have a separate, besides the blood that gives it life, it has a separate dye, a separate ink, that limits it. And the Radzina Rebbe was convinced that if you can only travel and catch this fish, that he'll be able to make techeles. A year later, in 1888, he published the second sefer, Psil Techeles, in which he writes that he was successful in getting a hold of the fish. And he writes in it the many rayas he has that this is the chalazon, and that this is the source of the techeles which we need to be mekayim mitzvahs. He also writes that the Admor Mekoznich, one of the great Hasidic Rebbes of that generation, had said that before Mashiach comes, the techeles will be renewed. And as always, as soon as you say the word Mashiach, people get excited. People want to jump on a bandwagon. Who doesn't want to bring Mashiach soon? And for that reason, there was a tremendous interest in finding the techeles. As a matter of fact, his Hasidim saw in it Yad Hashem, because 1888 was the year Taf Reish Mem Ches, and he felt that he would renew the chalazon in Taf Reish Mem Ches. His Hasidim wrote, it's exact gematria, Ato Tokum Terachem Tzion. Terachem is Taf Reish Mem Ches. So it's beferish that this seems anything to do with Mashiach. You always find a pasuk with a gematria that seems to fit. But on the other hand, it caught up the interest of his generation. A year later, in 1889, he wrote his third and final sefer, the Sefer Ein Techeles, in which he published, some of which we will discuss this evening. He published the kindness people had against him, and he answered. He published many letters he had written, and he tried to show, al pi din, al pi halacha, that what he had caught was the real chalazon, and that what he manufactured was the real techelet, and this was the way to go. And in that sefer he writes that in the year from 1888 to 1889, that he had techelet, he had already sold techelet, he writes, to 12,000 families. Had already purchased techelet from him. We don't have figures. This manufacture of Radzina techelet continued until the Second World War. And there were entire communities that wore techelet in the Hasidic world. I even remember as a child, in the Kapishnitzer Beis Medrash, here in Borough Park on 55th Street, Kapishnitz is somehow related to the Radzina, and I saw as a child, there was the curiosity to see the tzitzis there, which at that time was the only place I knew of where you can see techelet. What are the halachic issues? What is a chalazon? What does a chalazon look like? If you and I met the chalazon in the street one day, would we recognize a chalazon? How do we know what it looks like? Chazal give us in the Gemara 4 simanim. The Gemara Menachos says, Gufay daimel yam. It looks like the ocean. Now, a thing can't look like an ocean, except it must mean the color. The color is the color of the sea. Ubriyasai daimel dag, and it's a creature which is similar to a fish. Va'ayla echad l'shivim shana. It comes out of the sea once in 70 years. And lafikach damav yikarim, and it's very expensive. So we have 4 simanim. It's the color of the yam, the color of the sea. It's similar to a fish. It comes out once in 70 years, and it's very expensive. Very expensive, no problem. Whatever techelet was manufactured fit that siman perfectly. Very expensive. What does it mean it comes out once in 70 years? We are not aware of any creature of the sea which comes out once in 70 years, except in England, in the Loch Ness area. But outside of that, we don't know any creature which comes out once in 70 years. So all those who discuss the chalazon take this not literally. When we say we get it once in a yovel, once in a yovel means once in 50 years, it means it's rare. So we understand the Gemara is, anybody who discusses the chalazon has to accept that when the Gemara says achas l'shivim shana, it means it's a rare creature. It's not easy to get. It's not easy to find. We know that Zvulun had the schar that the chalazon was on the Mediterranean Sea in its section. Why? Because chalazon is rare. So it was a tremendous schar for Zvulun. They made a lot of money because they were able to harvest the chalazon. In Yitzhak Hashem, when we get to Yirmiyah, Perek Nun Beis, which probably will take a few years, there's a raya to this interpretation, because in Perek Nun Beis, we find in Yirmiyah a reference to people whose profession is catching chalazon. Now, what kind of profession is that if you can only catch it once in 70 years? That doesn't give you very much parnasa. I mean, there's certain times you have to wait 50 years to someone's born 20 years after, he goes into the market, he's a chalazon expert, got to wait another 50 or 60 or 70 years to get to work. Where are you going to make your money from? So it seems, in Achinami, that the chalazon was available. So we're left with 2 simanim. It has to be similar to a fish, daimel dag, and it has to be the color of the yam. And this, the Radzina felt that he had accomplished. There was another taina, that the squid is not a kosher fish. And being that it does not have scales, it's not a kosher fish, we know for mitzvahs we need min mutter bepicha. We need something that you're allowed to eat. So how could it be that the techelet is used? It comes from this chalazon, which is a tray for fish, but it has to be min mutter bepicha. How could it come from here? Said fakert, it's a raya to me, because in the Chuvas some Sefer Yeridayas and Murex Ayin Vav, some Sefer never dreamt that he would see a chalazon. He deals with this shaila that the chalazon, could the chalazon be treif? And the truth is, the Rabbi Yehuda Tinyana Rechaim Gimel mentions this as well. And they both say that the chalazim is only a mare bialma, when it's on the tzitzis, it's only a coloring, and something which is only a coloring does not have to be a kosher. And for that reason, there's no problem. Dr. Radzina, we see from the Chassam Sofer that Adarabah, the Chassam Sofer assumed the chalazin is a treifa fish. So if he assumed it's not kosher, so on the contrary, it's a raya, it's a tanya de Messiahli, that it is an unkosher fish. Now, Agav, I'll mention to you that this has bearing on the paint that we use to color the ritzuas. Because we're makbid to color the ritzuas of our tefillin only with a kosher type of a paint. Masha'enkein, if you hold that the color is nothing, color doesn't count, so then it should be the same thing for the tefillin. I'll be that as it may. These are the Rezina's answers. The Rezina set out on a trip across Europe to try to convince Gedolei Yisrael to wear his techelet. By and large, he was not successful. Rabbi Yisroel Kutna was one of the great leaders of European Jewry at that time. He happens to have printed in his Yeshuas Malkai the first 3 tshuvas on this topic. And he told the Radzina, what do you want from me? The Ilam was not makabel your techelet. So the Radzina walked over to the window. And he saw a Wasserträger. It was a low job in Europe, the person who carried the water from the wells. So he screams out to him, he calls out to him, he says, Reb Yid, what's the din of chametz m'shei shoyis ulamayla? So the fellow looks at him like he's nuts. What are you talking about? He tells him, what's the din of chametz m'shei shoyis ulamayla? So he tells him, look, if you have a question about water, I'll answer you. If you have a question about chametz m'shei shoyis ulamayla, ask Rabbi Yisroel Kutna. What are you screaming out the window to me? So the Radzina turns to Rabbi Yisroel Kutna, he tells him, the Gemara says, chametz m'shei shoyis ulamayla kuli alma maidi da'asur. The Gemara says the whole belt knows maida that chametz m'shei shoyis ulamayla is awesome. And he doesn't know what it is. Vai says kuli alma is the Talmidei Chachamim. You say the Olam wasn't Makabel. If you'll be Makabel, the Talmidei Chachamim will be Makabel. He did not shake him. Rabbi Shula Kutner writes in his Sefer that it's his personal belief that the Medrash says Hatchelas Nignaz, that means that it'll never be found till Yemaisa Mashiach. It was Nignaz with a plan. He writes, if we'll prove it's a chalazim, we'll have to wear it, because we don't paskin al pi Kabbalah. But he does write that it's his belief is that it won't be discovered. The Marsham also refused to publicly wear techelet. But when he died, they found in his tzava written that he has a talus in his study. He wants to be buried with that talus. That talus had the Radzina's techelet. And it seems that quietly, secretly, he would put on that talus every day. He may be makayim the mitzvah's techelet, and that he would put it on, he would wear it, and but publicly, he didn't want to be Mishana. Reb Yosef Ber Soloveitchik, in one of the shiurim that he used to give the yard side of his father, and it's printed in the shiurim, if I remember correctly, in the second chelik, page Reishai and Ches, he wrote that the Radzina came to the Beis Halevi, and he asked the Beis Halevi, his great Zayda, to wear the techeles. The Beis Halevi told him, techeles is not totally in svara, it's totally in Messiah. You have to have a Messiah. And if you take a fish that we've had all along, and no one used as techeles, then we can't accept we have a Messiah that it's not techeles. Nobody used it. The Chafetz Chaim was approached about wearing techeles. The Chafetz Chaim said, which is a mysterious comment coming from a Baal Halacha. But he refused to get into the particulars of the discussion. The Aruch HaShulchan in Siman Tes of Katan Yud Beis writes, "His poer echad shemotza chalazon." There's one person who claims to have found the chalazon, and he writes it wasn't makubal. He doesn't say he's wrong. He said it was not makubal. Lamaisa, it's hard to know, it's hard to say, but one thing we know is that the Radzina's Chalazon was accepted in certain Hasidic communities, but was not accepted according to the width of and the breadth of Klal Yisrael. Now, the intrigue in this issue does not end with the Radzina, because what happened was many years later, in the early 1900s, Rav Yitzchak Isaac Herzog, who later on went on to be the Rav HaRashi in Eretz Yisrael, at that time he was in Ireland, he wrote to the Radzina regarding the techelet. And the Radzina sent him techelet. He had this techelet taken to a lab and analyzed. And he was told that this techelet is a synthetic techelet. It's not a natural techelet, it's not an organic techelet at all. And Rav Herzog said he didn't believe that the Radzina is going to fool all this Hasidim with some synthetic. He sent it to a second lab, a third lab. And what came out was the following. When the Radzina had found the squid and decided that it's techelet, he had a problem. The Rambam writes that the eye of the chalazon is black. The Rambam writes in the second parak of Hilchos Tzitzis that it's black, and it has to be cooked to be turned blue. The squid gives off a black dye, and it has to be cooked to be turned blue. So the Radzina went to cook it, and he cooked it and cooked it and cooked it. Nothing happened. It stayed black. Can't have black techelet. So he put out in Italy. He put out a kol kairei in the Jewish community, but in the scientific and the fishermen's community. He hung up signs offering a reward to anyone who knows how to cook the squid's dye and make it turn blue. And after a while, one guy came to him and showed him the secret of how to change this chalazon's dye blue. And he told him you have to cook it at a tremendous heat for 4 to 5 hours, and you have to put in other ingredients. And he gave him certain ingredients to put in. Now this did not bother the Radzina, it made him very happy. Because the Rambam, when he describes the cooking of the techelet, he writes in Perek Beis Halacha Beis, Damai Shachar Kedyai. The chalazon has black blood. The Rambam writes, Ubayam HaMelach Nimtza, which literally means you find it in the Dead Sea. You don't find anything in the Dead Sea. This is understood to mean you find it in salt water. It's a saltwater fish as opposed to a sweetwater fish. V'noisnim esadam liyaira. You put it into a pot. V'noisnim imay samim anim. And you have to put in additional ingredients. And then, marsichin oisai, v'noisnim bayat semer, and it turns blue. So he cooked this up, and this is how he made the techelet. What Rav Herzog discovered is that the Radzina apparently was fooled. What he was given was something which wasn't blue at all, and he felt this certainly is not making it blue. He was given something which wasn't blue. However, the fact is that when you cook it at tremendous heat, the Radzina writes you have to cook it at a heat which is daimel la'esh shel gehenim. How he knew how hot that is there, I don't know. But he writes at tremendous heat. And that breaks down the chemical of which these other ingredients are made. And that creates a new chemical, together with the dama chalazon. And that becomes blue. Now, that's not a kasha. Maybe that's the way the chalazon was always made. But Rav Herzog discovered that if instead of using the dama chalazon, he put a piece of roast beef into the same pot and cooked it the same way with these other ingredients, he also got a blue dye. So it seemed to him, the roast beef is certainly not chalazon. It seemed to him that the Radzina had made a mistake. And we don't know Ad Hayom how to answer this. We don't have the Radzina to answer it. What's ironic is that after World War II, all the plans and the plant in which the Radzina techelet was made were all destroyed. There was nothing left. And afterwards, the Radzina Hasidim who remained wanted to make techelet. Where are they going to find techelet? They got a hold of Rav Herzog, and they asked him to send him the Radzina's letter. Because in his letter, the Radzina wrote Rav Herzog how to make it. They got a hold of the letter, And it's from there that today, those Hasidim who have techelet have it. So at the same time that Rav Herzog discredited the Radzina Hasidim who remain have the know-how and how the Radzina made the techelet based on that letter. Rav Herzog himself decided that the chalazin is not a fish. His maskana was that a snail, the janathina, if that means anything to any of you, or the janitha, was the true chalazin. He was never matzliach to actually create the techelet, but he came to the maskana that it wasn't a fish at all, that it was a snail. So we have our second chalazin, Rav Herzog's chalazin. Recently, there has been in certain areas in Eretz Yisrael a renewed interest in finding the chalazin. And today, we have many Yidden who are wearing techeles, based on a third chalazin. And that third one is also a snail called the Murex. And that snail is using that snail is based on the writings of Rav Herzog. Rav Herzog had taken into account the possibility that the Murex is the chalazin. He rejected it for two reasons. First of all, it has to be daimel yam. It has to look like the sea. And this snail is not blue at all. It's a white with brown stripes. That's what it looks like. There's no sea that's white with brown stripes. Secondly, it has to make a blue dye. And from this snail, he was only able to get a purple dye. And this is why he rejected it. Today, those who hold that this is the chalazin base this on the following two points. It's not daimel yam. They say, where did Rav Herzog see this Murex snail? In the British Museum. In the British Museum, when you see the snail, it's all polished and clean. No, daimel yam means you have to go down to the yam and look at it there. It doesn't look white at all. It's a grayish color. It's the same color as the shores of the Mediterranean where it's found. It blends into the color there. And for that reason, they feel that that's called daimel yam. It's not blue. It's not the color of the sea. So it's interesting that the claim that they make, actually Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky writes in a different context in Parshas Bereshis. Rabbi Yaakov says, what is the word yam? The yam is not the water of the ocean. Rabbi Yaakov says the word yam means the seabed. Yam sha'asa shloima. We had earlier that Shlomo HaMelech made a yam. What did he make? A tremendous container to hold water. The yam is that which holds the water. And this is what they're saying, that the yam is the seashore. And this snail is the same color. You only get purple out of it? So they say, it depends. It's a very delicate dye. The dye comes out and it changes color based on the amount of sunlight to which it's exposed. And if you expose it to strong sunlight, then it does turn blue. And for this reason, there are those who argue today that finally we have our third chalazin in 100 years, but this is the right one. That this is the chalazin, and this is the one which we should put on and wear as techelet. Agav, a lot of publicity has been given to the fact that these Murex snails, their shells are found in old caves from hundreds, maybe thousands of years ago, where old dying plants were discovered, and that they used this snail to make techelet. And to me, that's not a rational argument, because when they found these places, there was no big sign techelet factory. It could have been a place that they made dye. Maybe the ladies like to wear colored scarves, or the men like to wear colored shirts, or they like blue. It's no raya that's the techelet just because they found that 2,000 years ago people harvested this, or even if they found cloth with this color, it's no raya that it's techelet unless they find it on a beggar of talus, which has not yet happened. But al kapanim, these are the arguments. Why don't we all wear this techelet? Why is it that 110 years ago, and even recently, this has not been accepted? The truth is that there are 4 areas of great confusion regarding somebody who wants to create techelet. First of all, what is the chalazin? Is the chalazin a fish or is it a snail? Make up your mind. A squid is a fish. A snail is not a fish. Is the chalazin a dag or isn't it a dag? The answer is that it's a machlokes rishonim. Taisus Shabbos Daf Ayin Gimel says hu dag, that it's a fish. The Rambam in Perek Beis Halacha Beis hu dag, he says it's a fish. So the Rambam and Taisus say it's a fish, not a snail. Rashi in Sanhedrin Daf Tzadik Aleph writes that it's a teilas sheyotze min hayam. It's a small creature which comes out of the yam, which could easily mean a snail. So that actually the Radzina would have to be Maida, his techelet is not techelet like Rashi. Those who make it from a snail would have to be Maida, it's not techelet like the Rambam or Tosfos. The Gemara's lashon is daima ledag, that it's similar to a fish. You can answer. The Gemara said, "Who daima ledag?" All right, it could be a snail. I don't know if a snail is similar to a fish, but at least its habitat is similar. You can answer it. The Yehuda Tinyana Rechayim Gimel says clearly it's a machlokes rishonim. It's a fish, or if it's a snail, I should mention. The Yad Raman Sanhedrin Daf Tzadik Aleph, because he's bothered by the contradictory rayas. Rashi in one place says Olam min Hayam, in one place says Olam min Haaretz. So the Yad Ramah says that there are two types of chalazim. One is a fish, and one is a small creature. But most Rishonim, the Rambam certainly says v'hu dag, that it's a fish. That's number one. So today's techelet certainly doesn't stem with the Rambam sheet. In addition, what color is the techelet? So again, it's a machlokes rishonim. The Rambam writes in Perek Beis of Hilchos Tzitzis, he describes the color Zui demus rakia haniris la'ein hashemesh b'tahara shel rakia. Techelet is something that you can see in the sky la'ein Hashem, when the sun is shining, b'tahara shel rakia, when there are no clouds on a cloudless day in a sunny area. The color of the sky, that is the blue that we're talking about, which is a rather light blue. Rashi, on the other hand, the Masechta Sotah Daf Yud Zayin, writes beferish the opposite. Rashi says, Techeles loy dami l'rakia kol kach. Techeles does not look so much as the sky, ela daime l'daime. The Techeles is daime l'yam. It's similar to the color of the blue waters of an ocean, and the blue waters of an ocean are similar to the sky. So again, we have a machlokes Rashi and the Rambam into what exactly the chalazin is. The latest type of techelet, which today is gaining popularity in certain circles, is a techelet lefi, not lefi shitas Rambam. It's not a dag, and it's not as light blue as the sky when it's very sunny and cloudless. It fits better with Rashi Shita. Now, what gets confusing is the following. Let's say you have techelet. Eliyahu Navi came and he gave you techelet, and it has a hechsher on it with a plumber, and signed by Eliyahu Navi himself that this is techelet. Wonderful. What do you do now? What do you do with the techelet? How many strings of the 8 strings of your tzitzis on each corner are techelet? Again, we have a machlokes rishonim. And here there are not 2 but 3 different opinions. The Rambam holds that one of the 8 strings should be techelet. The Ravid holds that 2 of the 8 strings should be techelet. Rashi and Tosfos and Menachos hold that 4 of the 8, half, should be techelet. So we have a machlokes rishonim, how many strings to make techelet. About 2 years ago, there was an asifa in which 2 Talmidei Chachamim, who are very much behind the new techelet, spoke. And they were both wearing techelet at the time. One of them was wearing tzitzis with 1 string of techelet, and the other with 4 strings of techelet. And they spoke about the difference between them. But even if you had techelet, there would be a machlokes. Now, how would we paskin? I would think, according to Klolei Apsak, If Eliyahu Navi delivered techelet to me, I would say the following. If your Messiah is the Messiah of the Aratzes HaSfardim, the Sephardic lands always follow the Rambam Shita. If you follow the Rambam Shita, so you should take 1 out of 8. If you come from Ashkenazic background, who followed Rashi and the Balei Tosfos by and large, you would make it 4 out of 8. So l'chayra, if this is techelet, if you're a Sephardi, you should go with the Rambam, make it 1 out of 8. And if you're an Ashkenazi, you should make it 4 out of 8. There is a problem with each of these, and this gets to the 4th issue. Okay, 1 issue is a fish or a snail. 2nd is what color it is. 3rd, how many strings. And the 4th issue is the Radzina tied it to the Gedolim in his time, and we can tie it today. It might be techelet, it might not be techelet. What do you have to lose by putting it on, other than $150 per pair? What do you have to lose by putting it on? It's a mitzvah. It might be a mitzvah d'oraisa. We have very few mitzvahs d'oraisa b'zman hazeh that we can do on a daily basis. What do you have to lose? The answer was that the Rambam in Perek Beis Halacha Ches and Ilchas Tzitzis writes that tzitzis are supposed to be white, or they can be the color of the beged. If you have a green beged of tzitzis, you put on the corner, you can put on green strings. But if it's a white beged, then you can't put on green strings. It has to be white. L'shitas HaRambam, the tzeva hatzitzis of the non-techelet, techelet is blue, but the non-techelet is either white, in Shulchan Aruch it says it's white, or the color of the beged. So if so, you can't say, what do you have to lose? If it's a long shot, that this is the techelet. Because it might be fish, it might be snail. Even if you have the right thing, snail or fish, you might not have the right one. If it's a long shot, you do have something to lose. Because you're missing out on this mile of the Rambam. The Radzina answers 2 answers. He says, first of all, it's not ma'akiv. You have something to lose, l'chatchila. It's not ma'akiv. You don't passel. If all your strings are blue, it doesn't passel. But he argued further that the strings, the color of the strings are diamond to the beged, you should go basar roiv. Whatever is roiv, if you have 7 strings of white and 1 of blue, so even if the blue is not techelet, but you go basar roiv, you have 7 strings of white, the same as the beged, you have the Rambam's mila. Based on this, it's a little awkward in how to go about being mekayim techelet. You have a choice. You can go with the Rambam Shita, or you could go with Tosfos Shita. You have to help up. You're going to say, look, I'll go with Tosfos Shita. We're Ashkenazim, we'll go with Tosfos Shita. We'll make 4 out of 8. But if you go with 4 out of 8, you're missing this mila. You can't say I'll go basar roiv anymore. The Rambam's mila, that roiv of the string should be white or the color of the beged. If you're going to go 4 out of 8, that means you're already betting that this is right, the right one. Because you stand to lose the mila of the l'chatchila dikatzitzis. Elomai, we'll go with the Rambam Shita. We'll make 1 string out of 8, we'll make that one blue, we'll make that one techelet. But there's a problem. For us today to go with the Rambam Shita and to use the techelet, which comes from a snail, is inconsistent. Because the Rambam Shita was that the techelet is from a dog, from a fish, and that its color is a lighter blue. So when we're wearing this techelet, we're going to be saimech on Rashi and Tosfos Shita, and Rashi Shita, that it's a snail and it's a darker blue. So can we turn around now and put on 4 strings where Rashi Shita is? We put on 1 string where Rashi Shita is, you need 4. Maybe it's not totally zebezed to machlokes. But it seems that it's very hard. Lotzeis kol hashitas. Now, as I started, oyev mitzvah lo yisba mitzvah. The truth is that there's a tremendous tshuka to have techelet. We'd all love to have the techelet. And someone who has a tremendous ava, especially for mitzvah tzitzis. It says that when we wear tzitzis, we're not obligated to wear dalet kamfos. The Torah doesn't obligate us to wear dalet kamfos. But we wear it all the time because we know that be'idnan rischa manshinan lei, that we're supposed to show a love for mitzvahs. And someone who never goes out of his way to be Mekayim a mitzvah that he doesn't have to be Mekayim. Manshinon lei. B'idon rischa, if there's a time of anger, he gets punished for that too. Because L'chatchila was supposed to show Ava and be Mekayim mitzvahs we're not obligated to. That's the reason that we wear tzitzis the whole day, and even at night. The minhag is that when people are dressed in big day yaim, they keep their tzitzis on. Because of this inyan of bidnei rischa manshinon lei. To show Ava for mitzvahs tzitzis. And undoubtedly, this is what's behind the interest over these decades, the last 110 years, in wearing techelet. I should mention, for those of us who don't wear techelet, the nechama is that there are many gedolim who held that techelet is deliberately not with us today. The Chassam Sofer, as I mentioned earlier, the Ben Ish Chai and his close to Arizal, and the Yeshua Ismalkai all said that it's deliberately not here. And it's interesting. The Chassam Sofer writes in the later Chidushei Chassam Sofer that if when you say Kriya Shema Medagdik in the words, you see it merumas in the psukim. It says Va'asu lahem tzitzis al kanfei v'gdeim l'dayraisa. That Klal Yisrael is going to put on tzitzis on the begadim of their clothing l'dayraisa for all generations. End of pasuk. Next pasuk, v'nosnu al tzitzis hakanaf psil techelet. And I'll put on the tzitzis the string of techelet. So the Chassam Sofer, the word l'dayraisa is stuck in before the techelet. That va'asul lahem tzitzis al kanfei v'gdeim l'dayraisa. Jews will always have tzitzis. V'nosnu al tzitzis hakanaf psil techelet. There are many centuries where we don't have techelet. Not that we don't have a tremendous shukah for it. And someone who has the right shukah, the right oyev mitzvah, la yispa mitzvah, we have already our third possibility of what the chalazon is. Is this the final and accurate one? Nobody could say. Maybe in 50 years they'll find a reason to have a fourth type of techelet. Nobody knows. But somebody who it comes from this midah of oyev mitzvah, la yispa mitzvah, and runs after the mitzvah. So this is a midah which, at least at this point, we should be learning out of Yeravam. Now next week I will be away for Shabbos. I'll be back for the Navi Shir, but the Navi Shir next week begins at 8 instead of 7. Just for 1 week, then we go back to 7. Please, if you have chaverim who normally come and are not here tonight, let them know, it's on the schedule cards, that next week, 8 o'clock, a good tavach, everybody.
Brown and white, like you said, the one that is not thermally